This lecture we are going to talk about the API. It is very important as a backend developer. API is a very important topic, right? This is the last topic of this course actually, right? We will get a question, part of a question based on this topic as well, right? Then what is API? API stands for uh, Application Programming Interface. API stands for Application Programming Interface, right? Actually, what is this? What is this means? Why it is important as a backend developer? Let's see. By taking a simple example, let's see what is the purpose. Actually, what is the action of an API for a web application? Okay, let's take this simple example. Let's assume API is a waiter, right? You are going to have a lunch from a specific, let's say, restaurant, right? Then the waiters are coming to you and asking about the menu that you need to order from the restaurant, right? Then you can say by looking at the menu, you can order any type of meal for your lunch, right? Then the waiter will record your request or your requirements, then bring in to the chef at the in the kitchen of the restaurant, right? Then this waiter is hand over your request to the chef, and chef will make your meal, right? By adding the relevant ingredients, chef will make your order, right? You can in the restaurant side, it has a storeroom, right? In the storeroom, the relevant required things like oil, flour, rice, like things are stored inside the storeroom of the restaurant. Then chef can get the needed things from the restaurant storeroom and make your meal. After finish the making of your meal, then chef will hand over your order to the waiter, right? Then waiter will bring it back to you and serve to your table, right? In this case, waiter is mainly working as an API, right? Actually what he does here, in this case, customer and the chef, they don't know, chef don't know who are the customers, right? Customers don't know who are the person making your meal. You don't know, right? But the two ends are connected through this waiter, right? Waiter will bring your information to the chef. Then after that, once the chef is processed on your request, then come up with the solution. Then the response will be again bring from back end side to front end side by the waiter, right? In this case, waiter is working as a API in this scenario, right? It is very similar in the technical side as well. We have a server side, then we have a client side, right? In the server side, there are some kind of databases are connected to the server as well. All the data values, data needed for the web system is stored inside database, right? Like in this example, all the ingredients are stored inside the uh, storeroom of the restaurant, right? Same as this case, inside the database, all the required data are stored inside the database side, right? Then once you create a request, let's say for a web page, right? For a set of data values, right? Once you create a request, then this request will be go to the server side through an API, right? Through an API. Then this API is hand over your request to the backend. Then inside the backend, it is starting to process on your request. Then if it needs some data from the database, then server can communicate to the database and get the relevant data, needful data, then process on the data and create a response. Then again, this response will hand over to the API, and this API will bring this response to the client side. Then you can it will display the response on your browser interface, right? This is the simple architecture, the process of API, application programming interface, right? Uh, then there are four main types of four ways we can create an API, right? First one is we can create APIs for operating systems, right? We can create some API for operating systems. Then we can create some APIs for database systems. Database systems. We are going to discuss an example about the database system API as well, JDBC, Java Database Connectivity, right? Then we can create some APIs for hardware systems, right? Then we can create some APIs for JavaScript files as well and so on, right? JavaScript files and so on, right? When we talk about the steps of working of an API, steps of an API's life cycle, right? First, as the first step, client can initiate the request via APIs using URI, Uniform Resource Locator. Sorry, Uniform Resource Identifier, right? First, the client can initiate the request via or by using the APIs and or APIs with URI, Uniform Resource Identifiers. Then the APIs make a call to the target server after receiving this client request, right? Then API makes a API call to the target server once once gets the client request, or once receiving the client request, right? As the second step. Then as the third step, the server will process on your data or on your request and send response back to the API with the information, right? You are accessing some kind of resource from the server side. Then server will process on your response and sends server sends the response back to the API, with the information, right? It is the third step. At the fourth step or the final step, the API transfers the data to the client side. At the final step, the API will transfers the data to the client side. Transfer data to the client side, right? This is the complete life cycle or the steps of an API, right? First, the client can initiate their request via the APIs and using URI, Uniform Resource Identifier. Then API makes an API call, right? API makes an API call to the target server. and hand over your request to the server, right? Then in the server side, it will process on your request and hand over the response back to the API with the relevant information. Then as the final step, the API transfers data to the client side through the same medium, and you can finally you can view the data that are coming from server side to client side. These are the main steps of an API, right? Okay, then there are when we talk about the architecture of an API, we can divide it APIs into main two categories, right? If we think about the architecture of an API, we can divide APIs into two categories, two main categories. First one is REST API, right? Second one is SOAP API, right? In this lecture, we are mainly talking about REST API. Right? REST API stands for representational state transfer, right? Representational state transfer. SOAP API stands for Simple Object Access Protocol. A simple object access protocol, right? Right. There are two types of APIs. First one is REST API. Second one is SOAP API. In terms of architecture, right? In terms of architecture, we can divide APIs into two main categories. Right? Then when there are three main basic forms of APIs that are available, right? Three main, three basic forms of APIs are available, right? Three basic forms of APIs are available, right? Uh, the first type is web APIs. Web APIs, right? Second one is uh, local APIs. Third one is called a program APIs. Program APIs. Actually, what are the web APIs? This is very important, right? Web APIs are, let's say, you're going to build an application with some weather information of Sri Lanka, right? Then in traditional way, what we can do is we can create our own setup, drone or something, and collect weather information from uh, from the environment and get your data into your system, and you can display those things, right? But it is very uh, time consuming as well as very cost process, right? You have to go everywhere in the country and collect entire weather information in almost all in locations. But Google provide some kind of APIs, right? They are giving some set of services. Then you can integrate these services with your application, right? Using these APIs, you can connect, you can integrate these services to your application, right? That is actually what is happen in web app APIs, right? Some kind of services providers, like mainly in Google, they are providing some interfaces to use for the programmers for their applications. Actually, what happened here is, using an API, we can connect two different systems, two different programs, right? In this case, in this example, in this side, we have our program. In this side, we have our program, right? Let's say web or whether details are available on this program, right? In the other hand, Google providing weather information API here, right? Then actually what happened here is using an API, we can connect our program with this Google programs, right? Two different programs through an API, we can connect two different programs without any issue, right? Then without accessing this information illegally, Google provide a set of under the some kind of restrictions, right? They are providing an interface. We cannot see actually what happened inside these Google programs, right? Original programs. We cannot see what are the things happening inside these programs. Just they are giving some kind of uh, interfaces, some kind of methods for us, then we can directly access to this type of methods through an API, right? That is the importance of API, right? They are providing some additional security by adding HTTP headers and query string parameters and also cookies. By adding these security factors, they are providing these services, right? Not only Google, there are so many APIs available. Uh, we can integrate ChatGPT with our own web application as well, right? These are some examples of web APIs. Then the next one is local APIs. Did you heard this word .NET, .NET, .NET? This is very common example for local APIs. When we are installing some kind of software to your program, to your computer, sometimes they ask you to install .NET framework, right? What is the purpose of this one? The purpose of this one is the external or third party software is sometimes they are not be able to completely connect with your hardware and the operating system. In this case, they need some middle software layer to connect or transfer data from one program to another program, right? In this case, we are using .NET framework as a local API, right? In programs API, it allows or it gives us to remote program. It allows us to use remote program as a local program, right? Let's say there is a program is running inside a remote computer, right? Your computer is connected to that computer through a network, right? Then that program or using program APIs, it allows us to use that remote program as a local program, right? uh, by calling or we call it as remote procedure calls, right? By using remote procedure calls, it makes a remote program appears to be local by using these APIs, this type of APIs, right? So is a good example for program APIs. I told you earlier, in terms of architecture, there are two main types of APIs. First one is REST API, so second one is SOAP API, right? First two categories, first two basic forms are mainly based on REST APIs, right? Program APIs, SOAP APIs are the example of program APIs, right? Okay, then we can move further. I told you earlier in this case, in this lecture, we are mainly focusing on REST APIs, right? Let's see what are the REST APIs. REST API stands for representational state transfer. Representational state transfer. All right. The advantage of using REST APIs is, first one is it uses less bandwidth. When we are using REST APIs with our web application, it uses less bandwidth to communicate uh, with two programs. Less bandwidth. It uses less bandwidth, right? The second one is it's very simple and flexible. These are the two main advantage of using REST APIs in internet usage, right? The main advantage of this one is out of these two is uses less bandwidth. It uses very small bandwidth to communicate from one program to another program, right? In REST APIs, once you let's say for an example, let's take an example. Let's say you are the client of a system. Then we have a server in this side. You are accessing our website, faculty website, www.sci.pdm.ac.lk. You are creating a request from the server, right? You are send a request, right? This request could be a post request, HTTP post request. It could be a HTTP GET request. It could be a HTTP put request or patch request or delete request, right? You can send a request from client side to server side. Let's say this website, right? Then your request could be a post or get or put or patch or delete request, right? These are HTTP request, right? Actually, in this case, we are accessing this web page through an API, right? Then server will process on your data, on your request and send a response. Send a response, right? This response could be an HTML file. It could be an XML file. You know about the HTML. HTML is a data representation way. XML is a data transfer method, right? XML. It could be XML file. It could be a SOAP, right? It could be a JSON file. JSON is the latest way to transfer data from one place to another place, right? In this response, it could be an HTML file, it could be an XML file, it could be an SOAP, or it could be an JSON data file, right? Uh, Actually, this is the main architecture, main process of REST APIs, right? We can create an HTTP request from client side to server side. It could be a post request, it could be get, put, patch, or delete. Then after reaching to the server, it will process on your request and making a response, then send it back to the client. This response could be an HTML file, XML file, so file, and or a JSON file, right? Okay. These are the very basic things that you have to know about the REST API. When we talk about the SOAP API, it stands for Simple Object Access Protocol, right? It is a network protocol and it is uses only XML format to transfer data from one place to another place. But in this case, we can use HTML format, XML format, or JSON format. But in SOAP, it only uses XML format to transfer data from one place to another place, right? Okay, these are the things that you have to know about the APIs and the main type of APIs. Right. Let's take an example, coding example for this topic. Right. I'm using JDBC Java database connectivity for this example. Right. Database connectivity is a very important topic for web development, right? We already know there are so many things now we are added to the server side. In the client side, we have a client computer, one or more client computers. In the server side, we have some, we can use servlet technology or Spring MVC technology, or whatever you want, right? Let's say there are some servlets are there here. There are some servlets are there, and we have a web.xml file. Then web.xml file will receive your request, and it will direct your request to the target web servlet, right? And process on your request and send it back to the client side as a response, right? But this the logical component, logical things behind this system is stored inside these servlets, right? Logical things or logical codings are available inside this servlet or Java classes, but the data part is not there, right? It is stored in a separate place. We call it as database, right? We call it as database. It is always it is available inside the server side, right? We call it as DB, right? Inside this database, we can store any type of data. It could be a sound file, it could be a image, it could be a text file, right? Whatever data type we can store inside database, inside the database site, right? Then let's say you are requesting our university website to get all the students that are registered for a specific course, right? Let's say your URL will be something like this. For an example, www.site.ptn.ac.lk/student, right? Once you enter this URL on your browser, then it will create a request and go to this target location, and this URL is mapping to the relevant servlet. All right. Then inside this servlet, it will process, and it needs to take all the information about the students from database, right? Then you have to connect your servlet with this database, right? You have to connect with this servlet with this database, because we are going to access into the data already stored inside the database, right? Then in this time we need a specific API called JDBC, Java Database Connectivity. Using this software layer, we can communicate to the database, right? Let's say you are entering this URL to the section given in the browser. Then once you click on enter, then it will go to this target and execute the relevant method. And this method needs data stored inside the database, already stored inside the database. Then this Java application can access to the database through a database connectivity. We call it as JDBC, right? Then we are passing a relevant query here. Let's say for this one, the database management system is SQL, let's say, for an example. MySQL is running on this database. Then we have to insert a query, something like this. Select everything from student. right? We can send this query through this connection, and this database will retrieve this data and send the data to this Java program, right? Then perform some operation and add in some kind of JSON here, JSON no, XML no, whatever. Uh, or you can place this information inside a template as well, right? You know about the MVC architecture, right? We can place this data, model data inside the view part, view section, and you can send this data again to the client side, right? Actually, you can see how this database connectivity is how important for a web application, right? All the relevant data is stored inside the database, some kind of a database, right? Then you have to retrieve data from database to your program, right? Then at that time, the database connectivity is very important. This the connectivity is working as an API, right? This API gives a way to communicate from this program to this program, right? Okay, let's see before moving to a practical code. Let's see how this get, post, put, and delete URLs are changing according to, or the APIs are changing according to the set of scenarios, right? Let's say we'll take a new worksheet here. Okay, let's say your request for all students inside the uh, system, right? Then at that time you can create a request, something like this. Definitely you have to create a get request in this type, get request, right? Then your API / students, right? This is the URL pattern, right? If you want to get all the students that are stored inside the database, then you can give, you can send HTTP or an API for all students in this way, right? This API or the web URL could be something like this for our faculty website, www.sci.pdn.ac.lk/students, right? In real world, real case, this type of URL pattern is not there on website, right? This is just only for an example, right? This endpoint is not built in a website, right? There are some security functions are there. Then you just by entering this type of URL, you cannot get all the students' information, right? For an example, let's say you are going to accessing or all the student data is stored inside the this web page. Then you are going to access to these all the students. You can enter an URL something like this, right? Then let's say you are going to add a new student, to the database. Then what type of method you have to use? HTTP method. Definitely, it should be a post. It should be a post request, right? Then your URL should be API / students. But along with this URL, you have to send the relevant information, right? Let's say name of the person. You can send it in JSON format or XML format or whatever format you are going to prefer, right? In this case, I'm using a JSON format, right? Name should be, let's say, Mike, right? You are sending this information from client side to server side, right? Then the URL will be www.siberian.uk/students with this JSON information, right? This will be the URL pattern. Okay. Now let's say you are going to make some changes to the specific student. You are going to update. You are going to update a specific information already stored inside the server side. Then definitely should be a put method request or a patch, right? Then the URL will be API/students/ now we are targeting a specific row in the database, right? Let's say there is a data table for the students, right? Then you are going to target for a specific row, right? Then you have to give the ID of the row as well. Let's say the first row, right? Once you send this request to the server side, then it will affected to this row, this ID which are having this, which is having this ID, right? And also along with this URL, you have to send the new information as well. Let's say you are going to change this name to another one. Then in JSON format, we can send the new name here. Once you send this URL to the client side, what happen actually is it will accessing to this row which is having this ID and replace this previous name with this new name, right? Then if you want to delete a specific row, let's say row number 2, row ID 2, then you can use a delete method. Delete, right? Delete method. Then your URL will be students /ID, ID of the row, right? In this case, we no need to send any data because now we are completely deleting a specific row. Therefore, no need to send a data in this type, right? Okay, these are the URL changes, URL API calls for a get, post, put, or delete methods in HTTP, right? I told you earlier in APIs, we are as a client, we can create some request from the server side. This request could be a get request, post request, delete request, or a put or patch request, right? We can use this type of URL patterns for these different types of HTTP methods. Once you done this one, then this server will be respond again back to you. This response could be an XML file, HTML file, or a JSON file, right? Okay, these are the very basics of what we call API. Right. Let's move to an example. And in this case, I'm going to connect my Java program with SQL, right? The SQL is already running in my PC, right? In port number, I guess 3306, right? And inside my database, SQL database, there is a database called CSC 310.3, right? There's a database called CSC 3103. I'm going to use this database for this demonstration, right? Then there's a table created inside this database. We call it as student. Then we see the information about this table. It has three fields: name, registration number, and age. Registration number is the primary key of this table, and name and age. There are three data fields that are available in this table. What I'm going to do here is, first we have to create a connection in between our program and our database, right? There are 7 main steps we have to follow if we are connecting Java application to a database, right? When we are using JDBC, we have to follow 7 steps, right? Main 7 steps. Let's see what are the steps. Java steps for Java database connectivity, JDBC. As the first step, we have to import the relevant packages. Needful drivers and other packages we have to import first for our into our program, right? Import the packages. At the second step, we have to load and register the drivers into our program. Load and register the drivers. At the third step, we are establishing the connection. Establish the connection. Simply, we are connecting our Java program with the database. We are creating a pipeline, right? Then, as the fourth step, we can create a statement, SQL query, right? We can create a statement. This statement could be a normal statement or a simply select query, right? Or it could be a prepared statement, or it could be a callable statement, right? And as the fifth step, we are executing this query. All right, create a statement, then we are executing this query. Execute say execute the query. As the sixth step, we are retrieve the data from database. At the seventh step, we have to close all the connection in between Java program and the database. As a good programming practice, we have to break the connection, right? It is very important for the security of our system, right? Close the connection, right? These are the main 7 steps of JDBC, Java Database Connectivity, right? Okay, for this example, this demonstration, we need this library, right? I will share this jar file with you, right? MySQL connector jar file with you. Then you know how to configure this external libraries to Java program. Just you can drag and drop. But first you can create a simple Java program. Then you can drag and drop the jar file. Then once you drag and drop the jar files here, it will appear under the reference libraries. Then you can right click on that and go to build path, then configure build path, right? I have already configured this jar file here. That is the reason why it shows in this way. In other cases, you have to add this jar files as an external jar file, right? In JSON example or any other example, I showed you how to build or how to import an external jar file to our Java program, right? Okay, in this case, I'm going to go into this one, right? First, I initialize three variables: URL, username, and password. This URL is uh, including the port number, right? In my case, my MySQL is running on 3306 port number 3306, right? This is the by default port number for SQL Server, right? You can see your port number from this tab. Right click on your taskbar and go to Task Manager, then go to Service. Then you can find out all the port numbers here. Then from this list, you can select MySQL and find out the port ID, port number, which is using to the MySQL, right? Then this is the URL for my database, right? This at the end, we have to add the database name as well. In my case, the database name is CSC 310.3. That is why I'm entering CSC 313 here, 3103 here, right? Then username. In my case, I have an account in MySQL. It named as root and password root itself, right? Therefore, in this case, I'm using root as the username and root as the password. Then we are loading the relevant packages here, right? I'm importing all the packages from SQL java.sql package, right? Then I told you earlier, we have to follow these steps. First, import the packages, then load and register drivers. Here we are in this way, in this connection, driver manager.get connection, we can load these drivers to our program, right? Then we have to throw two exceptions actually. First one is class not found exception and SQL exception. We can use close clause here, or we can use try catch block here as well, right? Then as the parameter, we have to pass the URL, username, and password. Then create the connection in between our program and the database using create statement method, right? In this case also, I'm told you at the third step, we have to establish the connection, right? We have to establish the connection. Then we have to create a statement. It could be a normal statement, prepare statement, or callback statement. Then as the first step, we have to execute the query, then retrieve data and close the connection. Let's see how we can do these steps, right? First, we have to create a query. I'm going to create a query as an string, right? String variable, let's say query one. Initially, my table is empty. See, if I enter select query here, select everything from student. Initially, it is empty, right? This is an empty table. Then I'm going to insert a new student here. This is an string, right? Insert into table name student. The values will be first. We have to enter the name of the student, registration number, and the age. First two rows, first two columns data fields are strings. Second one is, sorry, third one is an integer value, right? In this case, I'm inserting a string here. Comma, then the registration number is 1999 or something, right? Then the age, right? This is the query I'm going to execute. Or in other words, we are going to add this information to this database, right? Through this Java application, right? Then we have to execute. Now we created the statement, then we have to execute this statement, right? Using this object, statement object, I can execute update. We are going to update our database. That is why I'm using execute update, and here I can pass this query here, right? This query here. As a result of this method, it will return the number of affected rows on our database. Therefore, I'm going to create a system.out or the console message here. System.out.println, right? Then st. This one will give a number here, and I'm going to append a message. Number of rows are affected. Right? Okay. In this statement, we can execute, right? After we are retrieving data or the feedback from database, right? It will feed into this console statement, and we can see the statement here. After finish the data transfer from Java application to database, we have to close all the connections, right? Let's save this program and see what will be the output once I run this application. Okay, it will give a message here, one of rows affected, right? It means we have successfully added this information to our database. Let's see. Again, I'm going to enter select query here, select every row from student. Previously, it is an empty set. Now, say our data is added to our database, right? You can use this way in the web applications as well, right? You can see the new data is added here. Okay, let's try to add one more student here. I will just copy and paste and change this variable. Insert into student values. I'm going to change this one to ABC or something. Then I have to change this one because this will be the primary key of our database. Then for age, I'm entering 25 here. Then I'm going to execute query 2 in this type. Save the changes and run my Java application. Again, get the same output for the console, one of row affected. Then once I execute again and select query here, you can see there are two rows available in our database or the table, and newly added data is also available in the inside the table, right? That is the one way to add a new student to our database, right? Okay, now this is for insert data. Now we are going to look how we can retrieve data. Now I'm going to view all the data from our database, or I'm going to retrieve data from database and show on the console, right? Then I have to create a select query here. That is third query. query 3, select query here, select everything from student. This time we are going to retrieve data, right? Of fetching data. Right? Okay. These are the steps you have to follow when you are fetching data from uh, database, right? Okay. This time we can't use this statement, create statement, because now we are going to retrieve data from database, right? Then we have to create a specific object called result set, right? We cannot directly use this one, right? We have to create a result set object. Result set object here. Then we can execute result set dot for the statement for the connection dot execute query. In previous case, we are using execute update here because we are adding new thing to the database. But in this case, we are not going to add anything. We are not going to make any changes to the database. Here we are going to retrieve data from database. So we are going to access to the data already available inside the database, right? Then we have to use execute query. This statement will return a set of values. Sometimes this set is an empty set. Sometimes it includes only one value. Sometimes it could be have more than one value. Therefore, we have to use a enhanced for loop or while loop to access to the data stored inside this object, right? In this case, I'm using let's say a while loop here, while rs dot next. This method will return a boolean value. This will return through uh, if this result set is already available some data. If it will return false once the result set is an empty set, right? Then I'm going to accessing to this result set one by one using this while loop, right? Result set dot get string. Then here we have to pass the column number, column index here. Then as the first index, first column, we have the name, right? Therefore, I'm enter 1 here to indicate the first column, right? Then append a space in between here, name, space colon, then registration number, rs dot get string, the second column, append rs dot get string, third column, right? Finally, I can print this data in the console. In real world case, you can send this data from server side to client side, right? In JSON format to XML format. For the demonstration, I'm printing this information in the console, right? Right. Save all the changes. I will comment this line because I can't enter the same value again, right? then run this application. It will show an error after reset. Duplicate entry. All right. Saving. Okay. Right. We can see all the data available in our database is retrieved here, right? Using this object, I can get all the information, all the data available in this target query, right? In this case, I'm accessing to the student table. I'm getting all student information, right? Then store inside this one, this object, and by using this rs.next, I can go through this result set and get one by one result here, right? And I can place the relevant into the relevant places and display here. In real world case, you can place this information inside the view part of your web application, and you can send uh, uh, an JSON file or whatever you want. You can send to the client side, right? Okay. This is for fetching data, right? Then in this case, this is a hard-coded query, right? But in real world case, we cannot use this kind of hard-coded ones. We cannot guess the information. We cannot get the user input, right? As the user, uh, they will enter their name, right? We cannot previously guess the name of that person, right? We cannot guess the registration number. We cannot guess the age, right? Then we have to use uh, prepared statements, right? We have to use prepared statements. We know the number of information. Let's say in your application, we have a input form. There are three input fields: name, registration number, and age. We know the exact number of data or exact number of data fields, right? But we don't know the data value, exact data value. Then we can use prepared statements, right? Let's see how we can create a prepared statement here. Query for. Again, I'm going to use this what we called this query for to insert a new user to the system, right? Let's say for the sign up page, right? Insert into student table name, student, values. In this case, we don't know the exact values, but we know the value patterns, right? In this case, we have three different values, right? Then we can use question marks here. We can use question marks here, right? This is the query for, right? For this demonstration, I'm creating three different variables and store this information, right? But in real world case, we can get this data from a input form, right? Submit form, we can get this information, right? We can extract data from HTTP request response objects, right? We can extract this data in this example. Just only for this example, I am storing this data in some kind of local variables, right? How to insert a different name here? Say Mike. Then registration number. In registration number S 19777. Then age, let's say 20, right? Let's assume this data are extracted from the request, right? Just assume, right? Then we have to create a prepare statement here, right? We can use an object from prepare statement interface, prepared statement, st. It's st2 because I'm creating a st object here, right? st2 equals connection dot uh, prepare statement. Then we have to pass the query here. The query is prepared query is query 4, right? Now we have to map this data into these question marks, right? We have to map this data into this question mark. Then we can use in this way object name st2 dot set string. Set string. Then we have to give the name of the column or the column number. In this case, name should be go to the first column, right? Then for the second one, set string, second column, registration number, st2 dot set string. For the third column, age. That's an error. Let's see reason. um, all right, in this case, we are going to pass an integer value here. I have to say set int. Instead of saying set string, we have to say set int here, right? Then again, we have to execute this statement. Then again, it will return the number of rows, affected rows, right? Therefore, I'm creating a variable here, integer type variable here. Then st2 dot execute update. Now we are going to update our database. Therefore, we have to use execute update method here. Execute update. In this case, we are not no need to pass the query here because we are already passing this query for this object, right? In object dot execute update, right? Then if I implement a console message here, system dot out dot print ln this count, you can pass count here. Number of rows affected, right? I will comment out these code lines because if I execute all this statement in the console, it will mess up, right? Okay, save the changes and let's see. Okay, now one number of rows affected, and let's see what are the available data inside the database. Select everything from student. You can see the new data is available in our database, right? If I change this one again, let's say XYZ, then it's 19666. In this time, we are using this template, right? This is working as a template, right? In this here we are placing this value according to these locations. These question marks are representing the relevant column, right? First column, second column, and third column, right? I save this one and execute this program again. And again, show one row of one number of row affected. And if I see this one, see all the information from the database, it will show the new data is available here, XYZ, and it will show uh, all the information in the table, right? If I comment out all of these code lines and again just try to fetch all the information available in our database. As you can see the same output here as well. All right. Okay. In this case, we are communicating in two ways, in two directions, right? We can put new data, we can make some changes to the database as well as we can retrieve data. We can get data from database, right? In this case, we are using an API, right? API, through an API, we are communicating two different data resources, right? Two different resources, we can communicate with each other through an API, right? Then we can say all the web services are APIs, but all APIs are not web services, right? All web services are some kind of a API, right? But all APIs are not web services, right? Not websites, right? They are just some API services. Then as a programmer, we can access to that APIs, and through this API, we can get the information from the information source, right? Okay. I will share this code with you, and also I will share this jar file with you. Then you can go through this one and you can do this example. First, check your port number, MySQL port number, and change your port number countedly, as well as your username and the password for your local MySQL connection, right? Or else you can create a remote MySQL database as well. Then you can place the URL here, right? We'll give an URL for you, then you can place your URL here, and then you can replace the database name from here, right? Okay, these are the things that I have to cover during this lecture, right? Then you can go through these codes again, right? Then this is the end of this course actually.